So, next session. I would like to remind that last year, actually, Adrian had a quite nice talk on, and I believe there's 2016 in Zurich. He made a follow-up. The follow-up ended up like being #1 in Naked News. So we are expecting to see you, at least you on the New York Times. So please do your best. So you know, you can only improve. So you cannot do worse than that. So
thank you.
We have a lot of
that makes me feel great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not putting pressure on you. Just you know, some random talk.
No. I can see that. No.
Okay, perfect. So cool. Please welcome Adrian on the stage.
Thank you, everyone, for choosing my session. There's a very interesting one about Xamarin on the other side, so I'm really flattered that you're all here. How many of you were on my session last year? Oh, quite a few. So all the rest, I hope to be on par with the expectations. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to talk about how to make your Android apps work on the whole range of Galaxy smartphones. So as you know, there's the Galaxy S8 that came out lately. I know, it's a stupid joke, but I really had to do it. It's an app making conference after all, people. So basically, yeah, actually what I'm going to do in this talk is build upon my talk of last year. So for those of you who weren't here, last year I talked about how it felt being a developer at 40, how you can get there with a little bit of sanity. And I gave 12 tips for younger people, let's say, and the older people as well. And my second point in that talk was this concept called about galaxies, right? And it was a fairly popular talk, particularly between among grumpy old geek people that happen to work with computers. And that second topic was precisely to choose your galaxy wisely. So I'm just going to quote myself, which is a very pretentious thing to do if you want. In our industry, every technology generates what I call a galaxy, okay? These galaxies feature stars, but also black holes, meteoric changes that fade in the night, many planets, all in a tiny fraction of width, of which harbor some kind of life, lots of cosmic dust and dark matter. So that's my definition of galaxies, technology galaxies. Actually, when you think about it, this is a politically correct way to define a religion, okay? I'm not going to go into these kind of things. There's a lot of terms like evangelist in our industry. I'm not going to use them. I think that Galaxy speaks a bit better and is less controversial. But the advantage of using the term religion compared to galaxies is the fact that you've got this notion of sociology going up. And in my opinion, there's many problems going on in all the galaxies that we are going to visit today that have to do with social problems in an industry. And I want to raise awareness on that, and I hope also to make you smile a little bit. In this talk, we're going to go through 6 galaxies. Yeah, we're going to do that in half an hour, because believe me, everything is connected to a certain point. Now, this talk has a title that is inspired by a famous book. This is the only slide that actually I'm going to put here that actually references that book. You know the answer to everything. Right now, I'm 43, so you can say that I'm the answer of everything plus 1. Let's start our trip with the first galaxy, which is BABELIA. BABELIA is a galaxy of Perl, Python, PHP, and Ruby. And, you know, I'm going to start this discussion about quality software, because it's a very interesting thing to see how much all the industry strives and fights to make the best possible software for all people, you know, accessible, cheap, with quality, no bugs, no crashes. Actually, not so much. It's quite the opposite. If you look at the state of software, it's kind of disappointing sometimes to see how much all of our applications crash all the time, how we suffer all the time to deliver good software. It's really a big problem. And actually, software rots. This is a kind of a weird consideration when you think about it, because software is not a physical thing. You know, it's not like you have this kind of organic software. Well, actually, I've seen a couple of, you know, very hipster shops, development shops that have this kind of denomination. They say themselves, oh, we're economically viable, or we are environmentally friendly, or we are organic made software. I've seen that in a website as well, which is really weird. Hipsters are these people who are actually very good at speaking Japanese, much better than the Japanese themselves. They have incredible espresso machines in their shops, and they usually bike to work or take their motorbikes as well, and they go to holidays to really weird places, and they have dogs that match their eyeglasses. And they spend an enormous amount of time. I have enormous respect for these people. They spend an enormous amount of time trying to come up with cool software, you know, original ideas, trying to make new stuff. But of course, they are not friends with Marco Arment or, you know, John Gruber. So basically, their ideas fade into the night. Nobody buys them. Or if somebody buys them, they get enough money to buy some dongles, because, you know, the new MacBook is coming. Again, going back to software vendors, I have this anecdote. I was going through some backups in my machine, in my home a couple of weeks ago, and I found all documents that I created using Word 2.0 on Windows 3.1 on more or less 1992 to 1995. So this is what it looked like. And back in the time, the encoding that you used was Windows 1252 or whatever the name that was. And of course, I had equations, because I was studying physics back then in Geneva, not so far from here. And I didn't know that LaTeX existed. So I should have been, if I had been smarter or somebody had guided me, I would have written this. Or because we all know that there's a substantial difference in productivity compared LaTeX, particularly compared to Word. You could go these days even in XML if you want and define this beautiful equation that we show on your document. But now it's 2017. I wanted to open those documents with very old equations, you know, and basically the only software that actually worked for that is LibreOffice and ABI Word. It turns out that Word, the current version of Word, cannot open properly documents from 1992. This is what I got when I tried to open my famous documents and my equations. So seriously, I was a bit pissed off. There's a kind of a deja vu, because I then started using Pages for another thing, and I realized that Pages has an equation editor that accepts LaTeX and MathML, which is really weird, it's really convenient. At the same time, Apple Pages until last year couldn't open Apple Pages 2005 documents. So, being a user of Apple Pages since day one, I couldn't open documents that I had created 10 years before. So once again, it's deja vu. I'm feeling that again, once again. So since then, since that time, I'm writing everything in Markdown. You know, Markdown, which is created by the same John Gruber that we just saw, and ASCIIDOC. If you need something a bit more complex, some kind of more complex documentation, you can use that. And of course, you use UTF-8, because basically that's much better. And actually, it's great for Japanese hipsters, because you can store this kind of thing, which I read, Inonaka no kasawo tawaisai chirasu. It means a frog in a well does not know the great sea. This is a typical thing that hipsters would tell each other when they release software to the App Store. And of course, John Gruber defined the only standard that exists today of Markdown using PERL. And following this trend, somebody defined textile with PHP, ASCIIDOC with Python. Somebody rewrote ASCIIDOC and it named ASCIIDOCtor using Ruby. And then some very, very high hipster in the scale of hipsterism used Haskell, and it's a professor of philosophy in California who created this. And this is one of the most incredible tools that you have in the open source Galaxy, and in this Galaxy particularly, which basically amounts to converting anything to anything, and it's a fantastic piece of software. Let's go now to another Galaxy, shall we? Let's go to APOCALYPSIA. APOCALYPSIA, it's a beautiful place. It has fantastic error management, as you can see. This is the technique of the ostrich. You just bury your head in the sand and hope for everything to go well. As you can see, if there's an error, just keep going and it's okay. This galaxy has been discovered by this astronomer called Alan Cooper. He was working for the Microsoft laboratories and observatories. And of course, this is what Microsoft used to look like. This was my Visual Basic back in the days of Windows 3.1. This spawned a whole industry of applications that consisted of a single form with lots of buttons. This was the state-of-the-art of app development back in the day. And Microsoft liked Visual Basic so much, they hired Joel Spolsky to put Visual Basic inside of Office. So now you got Visual Basic for, you know, Excel, Word, and everything that you want. And then came VBScript. At some point, for those of you who were here last year, you remember that VBScript was my first professional programming language. You can use it to create ASP applications, right, that run on the server. It was before PHP at some points. This book doesn't exist, actually. If it existed, it would have negative pages, if you see what I mean. Turns out that in 2010, I answered a question in Stack Overflow. It's a very interesting question that the name of the question was Strangest Language Feature. Okay? This was the time when in Stack Overflow you could actually have fun. There were not so many police or you know, grammar Nazis or people closing your question for no reason, this kind of stuff. It was a really fun place. And basically, I answered saying that in Visual Basic, if you forgot to return properly from your function, you would have a return none, without any kind of warning. That's the way things happen. And this is how you write a function in VBScript. So basically, if you rename the function, you're fucked, because basically now your function returns none automatically. If you don't remain as well the small variable, because this is how you return values in VBScript. Turns out that Jeff Atwood, the co-founder of Stack Overflow, left a comment below my response, which basically sums it all. It sucked, basically. And it was the source of countless errors. But this is actually not the worst of the whole language. Let's say, for example, you have classes. VBScript had classes. It was a revelation at some point. I said, oh, well, I wanted to learn object-oriented programming. Let's use VBScript, because I'm using VBScript every day at work. Well, it turns out that as convenient as they look like, you cannot use them. Because the ASP runtime running inside the Internet Information Services, which is the web server of Microsoft, is multi-threaded. And it turns out that the instances of a VBScript class are dependent on the thread that were created, so you cannot share them. So basically, they are completely useless. Not only that, you have absolutely no polymorphism or inheritance in Visual Basic, so it doesn't make any sense. A class is just a struct of data and variables that you have to get rid of as soon as the request cycle is over, okay? I will... Please raise your hands if you remember Verity Stub. Somebody who remembers Verity Stub, there you go, exactly. We have to be old enough. Dr. Dobbs magazine, it's an anonymous developer from the UK who wrote a regular column in a very well-known magazine called Dr. Dobbs back in the time, and he wrote this incredible phrase that has stood the test of time for all variants, all varieties of VBScript. This is the only sane feature of the language, and of course is disabled by default. Option explicit, it basically turns on a couple of warnings for you to work with the language. When you created VB3 applications back in the 90s, you had to deliver your application with a small DLL file called VBRun300.dll. For those of us who remember that time, it was a hunt on shareware websites, early shareware websites or shareware diskettes, to find a copy of this so that you would be able to run your code on your machine. And it was a 400 kilobyte DLL with, you know, memory management, standard library, and these kind of things. When VB.NET came out in 2002, the .NET framework was not included by default in Windows XP, because there was an internal fight at Microsoft or something happened. So you had to bundle 25 megabytes of the .NET framework so that your VB application would run, which basically explains the huge popularity of the platform back then. Now, it turns out that these days, if you bundle Swift inside of your application on the App Store, where you're going to have an increase in size as well, which is very surprising when you think about it. We're doing that every day, every time we download something, and even Kotlin, that's this. So things somehow stay the same in this galaxy. Let's go to Paradigmia. Paradigmia, a beautiful place. It has incredible, very informative error messages. It's a fantastic place. You know, C++ has one thing, has Pedigree. And I always wanted, when I was a kid, I said, yeah, one day I will be a C++ developer, and I'm going to have that Pedigree myself. So I looked for a job on C++. I found one, I got hired, and of course the first day they gave me the coding guidelines, like any serious shop would. And in the coding guidelines there were 4 points at the very beginning saying, our code base does not accept macros, multiple inheritance, template metaprogramming, and standard template library. I will wait here for you to digest. For those of you who use C++ in any dose, can you imagine what remains of C++ when you remove these 4 things? C. C with classes and not even macros. So basically, I understand that you don't want macros, but what do you do without multiple inheritance, template, more? So the thing is the following, is that multiple inheritance scared the shit out of these people. Seriously, they were super scared. And I think you are scared as well, because every time I mention, so let's do it again. I want to see your reaction, please. Once again, everybody, multiple inheritance. There you go, exactly. That's how it goes. You feel your legs shaking. Everything is going down. I mean, it's terrible. Well, you know what? Actually, you're using multiple inheritance in many languages, even if you don't know. But the thing is that, of course, we use toned-down versions of it. We're not using the Eiffel or the C++ version of multiple inheritance. But basically, if you use abstract classes, pure virtual method in C++, you can actually do something very similar to interfaces and protocols. And the big problem of not using macros or multiple inheritance or anything, there was a lot of cut and paste going on in this code base. It was a financial system that we were working on. 500,000 lines of code that took 4 hours to build. So another guideline on the, and I'm not kidding, this is serious, another guideline was do not clean unnecessarily the project, because 4 hours meant half a day off while your code compiles. And there were 4,000 tests, because it was a financial package. You got to make sure that all the calculations are right. And funny enough, we were using VBScript to load everything into Excel files. And this is what the IDE would look like, because these people, they didn't want to use Visual Studio.NET from 2005. So they still use Visual Studio 6. And basically, they were using CVS as well. So they were using technology from another time. Let's go to Kulia. Kulia is a beautiful place. Kulia, it's quite an old galaxy. It's been discovered around 30 years ago. And the astronomers have created since then a very clear taxonomy of these galaxies, and there's basically two kinds of galaxies. You can categorize these galaxies in two groups. Basically, you have the East Coast and the West Coast. The East Coast and the West Coast type of galaxies. In the East Coast family of programming languages or galaxies has been invented by C. As you see, it was born in the metro of New York, in the subway of New York, and these people are very uptight. You know, they meet every so often. They sit in special languages that have their names. They're very ordered. You know, this is Tea Party in New England, the Mayflower. We're very respectful of the traditions and everything that has to do with that. At some point, very standardized, very obnoxious kind of people, and they use. And basically they drink in their little cups of tea, you know, and they bitch about each other, you know. It's like C++ now, it's all about bitching about how he's able to do everything automatically, and auto, and everything is inferred somehow. And basically they make fun of PHP, because PHP now tries to have, you know, classes, abstract classes, interfaces, traits and whatnot. So they make fun of him, and it's very mean people, very mean people. Actually, Pascal is one of the members of the group. He's retired now, of course. He lives in Switzerland, where he was born, and unfortunately he had to go to Switzerland back after retirement to be treated for schizophrenia, because this was the dual personality he was showing back in the 80s. It was very sad to watch. On the other side, we've got the West Coast languages. Very cool languages. Very cool languages. These people gather, you know, they listen, cool music, you know, Pink Floyd, The Doors, Janis Joplin. They go to the beach, they pray for Iemanjá, you know, because we have to save the dolphins in Nicaragua. It's very important. We have to really do something for the earth. And this group was founded by Smalltalk. Smalltalk was this very wise old guy who would quote Hunter Thompson all the time and Alan Watts, and they were gathering, and of course there was LSD for everyone. Ruby joined at some point in the 90s, very nice guy coming from Japan, very open-minded. He had traveled around Europe in a train. He loved it. He loved Denmark, by the way. Basically, another member, eponymous member, of course, is Objective-C, one of the most well-known in our place, Objective-C. One of those cool guys. You can tell him, you know what, this is an array, man. And he was like, of course, man. It's a law. It's an array. Everything is an array. We're good. We're good. The funny thing is that VBScript tried to join the club, you know, because he said this is really cool. But you know, they were a bit suspicious because he's, you know, the son of a very rich family. So it didn't quite work out for poor VBScript. But you know, there's a secret. There's a secret. There's a secret. Objective-C had a secret. Very deep down, Objective-C wanted to be from the East Coast. Yeah, incredible. He tried as hard as he can to have, you know, this static type thing going on so that he couldn't show off. But there was another hidden thing that he never mentioned in those groups in the beach praying for Yemanja. He was the cousin of C++. Yeah, they actually shared an abstract binary interface. You think the drama this would have been in both groups, for both C++, who had such a reputation on the East Coast, and for Objective-C, it was so cool listening to Pink Floyd on those praying sessions to Jemanja. Let's go to UNDEFINEDIA. UNDEFINEDIA, it's a very nice place. It's a beautiful place. You know where I'm taking this. This is from the talk by Gary Bernard from Codemasters 2012. You gotta watch this. It's 4 minutes long. It's absolutely hilarious. I mentioned this because I cannot do better than this guy. And basically, JavaScript took the advice of Ruby. So they were in the same group. Of course, JavaScript was part of the West Coast group, and Ruby told her, you gotta go to Denmark. So the guy went to Denmark, and he met Lars Bak, and Lars Bak said, well, this is cool. You need an engine, man. You're going too slow. And all of a sudden, V10 came, and Node came, and now Electron came. And JavaScript became so cool in Europe that everybody wanted to be JavaScript. And now everybody compiles to JavaScript. It's kind of incredible what happened. He's really making a living in Europe right now. He doesn't go very often to the West Coast, to be frank. Let's go to Migrania. Migrania is a very nice galaxy as well that we find in the local cluster. And it looks very good. It looks very good. It's very useful. It actually uses UTF-8. So as you can see, everything goes together. So you can use emojis in your code, and it does functional and map reduce and filter and whatnot. And I want to just make a small pause here, because when you think about it, both the JVM and the CLR are de facto application binary interfaces, right? And the smart ones of you, which is pretty much the whole room, are already knowing where I'm going with this. The rant part begins now. In 1993, Microsoft introduced something called COM. Who used COM? You use COM? COM. Yeah, very good. And basically, COM was defined, and this is the official definition of Microsoft, and it's still up there in their website. You can find it on MSDN. It's a binary interface standard for software components to enable inter-process communication between diverse programming languages. This was 1993. These guys were so proud of how you could create a component in Visual Basic and use it in C++ and so on and so forth. That was pretty much the only use case, basically. That they actually thought that they had solved the software crisis. OLE and COM was the solution to everything. This is before, or more or less at the same time that Java is kind of appearing up there. So this is how you create a COM object. It's very simple, as you can see. It's just C++, and surprisingly, you use reference counting. Hey, doesn't that strike some memories for all of you who were doing iPhone development back in 2008? There you go, reference counting. Of course, it's a bit easier in Objective-C because, well, it's cooler, as you know. Now, the ABI had quite an impact. If we have today F#, JRuby, if we have today Kotlin and Scala, it's because of that ABI. Because people have been able, like Odersky explained here yesterday, the capability of the JVM to provide a lot of services and code already made so that he could create a very useful, incredibly useful language like Scala on top of a very strong platform like the JVM. One would think that with LLVM we would have something like that, right? Instead, what we get every so often, well, it's a new migration assistant in this Migrania galaxy of ours. And of course, if you don't like it, you can file radars, which is a very polite way to tell you to, yourself. And of course, things would crash. Typically, your IDE, where your code is being compiled, and then iCloud wouldn't work, or it works once in a while. And all of a sudden, they tell you to change your code documentation from restructured text to Markdown. Yeah, that Markdown. And then you have iTunes, that is incredible, absolute memory hog. And then you have to merge storyboards, and all of a sudden, you have the touch bar. And then you have to buy dongles, and the whole thing kind of goes down. So it's kind of an oppressing feeling somehow. So, our local cluster. The local cluster is here and now. The local cluster is what's happening in this room, in this conference. This is our ensemble of galaxies. And last year, I finished my talk giving my famous recommendation to you, right, about these galaxies. When I was talking about these galaxies, I said, okay, choose the one that you want, choose it wisely, but always keep your eyes pointed to other galaxies. So these days I've been doing a little bit of that. I've been pointing my telescope to other places, and what I've seen is convergence. I've seen many programming languages going in very similar directions, and for me it's very striking to see C++ 17, PHP 7.1, as much as we laugh about the poor guy, C# 6, JavaScript 6, of course, Java 9, Kotlin, Swift, Scala. They all go into similar directions. It doesn't matter which one. This is another very hipster quote that I will say I have to read. Daido shoi, literally meaning bit similarity, small difference. Okay? Similarities outweigh the difference. So for example, we have lambdas, type inference, protocol extensions, and different forms of multiple inheritance and mixins all bundled in these different languages. We see web browsers in mobile applications going into defined directions and really merging in many ways. And then all of a sudden you see Scott Hanselman, that for those of you who don't do C#, this is a very, very well-known person in the Microsoft Galaxy. He does a lot of evangelizing of C#, by the way, talking about religion. And the other day he showed his tweet. He was very proud that he was using Tmux and Vim to create .NET apps on a Windows machine. Have we reached the singularity? Maybe? Is it true? So we have a Greek in the room. I will ask the Greek person in the room to confirm. He's right next to you. Please, can you confirm that this is it well written? Yeah? Very good. What does it mean? Everything changes and nothing stands still. And it was Heraclitus who said this back in the time, you know, in the time of the big philosophers. Now, at the same time, we have John Baptiste Alphonse Fa. So thank you for here. What's your name? What's your name again? Jeffrey. You told me, you gave me the idea of actually including this because it fits very well right here. So there's kind of a contradiction, right? Everything changes and at the same time, everything is the same. And actually, when you think about it, our industry has really gone a long way to actually do the same things once and again. So everything changes, yet what I see that hasn't changed at all is micromanagement, pseudo-scrum, discrimination of groups other than male, Caucasian men between 25 and 35 years old. All of these groups of people are actively discriminated. We see harassment. We see companies that have absolutely they don't absolutely give a shit about testing or quality or accessibility. And we see developers into burnout. I was last week at a conference in Lyon. It was staggering the number of developers talking openly about how much pressure they suffer from their managers. This cannot be. This is not sustainable. This is not the galaxy I want to live in. And what I need is you being the guardians of the galaxy. Whatever the galaxy it is, I don't care which one, but you gotta take ownership and have empathy to avoid those parts of the galaxies and to make them change. The objective would be that there's no more harassment, no more burnout, no more discrimination of people from other religions, of different family names or so on. I get it. To be fair, I mean, I'm Swiss. I have a Swiss passport. I got a rejection to a job because I have a Polish family name. And I got the letter saying, oh, this job is only for Swiss people. And I'm like, I can send you a photo of me in the Swiss army if you want. I mean, it's okay. I mean, I really have no problem. Refuse jobs, when you go to interviews, refuse jobs that don't have any inclusion or any diversity. Refuse jobs that offer you an open space. I told you, they are super proud about showing you an open space. It's ridiculous. This doesn't have any, thank you. This doesn't make any sense. Let's wake up. Don't release code without tests. Like, have this in your own self of the ownership of what you're doing and have the biggest possible amount of code coverage. Don't release inaccessible apps. Think about people like me who are basically losing my sight and a little bit of my ear, and I'm only 43. I cannot expect to be much better in 10 years from now, but I would like to love your apps. I would like to use them, your apps, and I'm doing well compared to many other people. So please make accessible apps. Use the accessibility APIs of your platforms. And don't accept bullshit from the App Store owners. You've seen what's going on between Uber and the App Store these days. I won't say anything else, but it's outrageous. Don't jump into proprietary lock-in. You've seen what happened to me with Word and Pages. The problem is not the programming languages. The problem is not the frameworks or the design patterns. The problem is us. We have to change. There are things that have to change in our industry, and I please beg to every one of you to please go back home tonight and say, I can change things. I will do it. Let's keep this in mind. We are humans. We have limits. Okay? There are things that we can do. If we can do, we should do them at that point in time. And of course, the trip is much more important than the destination, as the Japanese would used to say, Kachou Fugetsu, which literally means the experience the beauties of nature, and in doing so, learn about yourself. This is Akosma, this is me, and thank you so much.